I'm Ninveh Neuman from Rockwell Automation. I head up our global marketing organization and our digital business transformation. As he mentioned, Rockwell Automation has been around for 115 years. And with that comes a lot of great. But what that also, we're also faced with is a resistance to change. 115 years and we're still going strong. Publicly traded company, good financial health, good growth, good stability. And so then I'm in my role as chief instigator, I feel like many times, trying to drive the organization forward, trying to bring new ideas and new concepts forward. And so I'll give you a little bit of perspective on Rockwell Automation. Most people don't know that brand. It's not a household name. We're in the B2B industrial space. We create products, services, solutions that ultimately help manufacturers of end products and producers of natural resources drive productivity, drive safety, ensure security in their operations and processes. And our latest control platform, which was one of our key flagship technologies, is responsible in the last 15 years for producing over 1.3 billion vehicles around the world. 40 billion packages we're responsible for sorting on a given basis. 36 billion barrels of beer, which is probably my favorite statistic, and 613 billion rolls of toilet paper, which kind of has a corollary to the primary statistic before. So when you think about that, customers are counting on us to deliver products and solutions that ensure uptime, that ensure safety, whether it's in the oil and gas industry where any kind of safety issue could be really tragic environmentally and for people, or whether they're doing highly automated electric vehicle assembly in the new market space that's happening there. So we feel a lot of responsibility to deliver the right solutions for our customers, and we've been doing it, as I said, for 115 years. What transformation takes in a state of solid, good performance is a little harder than when you're facing crisis. I think the statistic is something like 85% of the time companies transform when they have no other choice. They have to transform. So they've been disrupted, they're not achieving financial performance, they've got talent issues, whatever those crises are, is usually the time that a company transforms. So in my role for Rockwell, I've been in this role for 6 years, I realized that part of my responsibility is to drive that change. I started with the marketing organization over the last 10 years, but the latest has been digital business transformation. So when I think about that, I think about a couple of things. One is I'm in an engineering environment, and engineers in our organization, they're piled all over the place. They speak a certain language to each other and to our customer base. And as a marketer, I'm not an engineer by trade. So I speak my own language. I speak about content and syndication. I speak about social media and new capabilities that are coming to bear in marketing. But for the first time in our business, what I've noticed is that the language of the business and the language of marketing have come together. So we've been talking about things like mobility and data and analytics and kind of the IoT super science that's now coming into real life in our manufacturing and production environment that we've been worried about on the marketing side for the last 5 or 6 years. We also think about consumerism. So we think about the fact that our customer base has more power and more autonomy than ever before. I tell people all the time, it's the first time where we're all our own authors, our own videographers, our own critics, our own commerce agents. We have so much power and voice as consumers in any brand that is in both business to consumer and business to business markets. And so that means the power for marketing gets really distributed. If I think back to how many of us watch Mad Men, right? Back in the day, you created a slogan, you created a brand image, you created a jingle maybe, and you pushed it out to the market, and what most of the market knew about your brand was what you said about your brand. Today, the market listens more, and there is way more content created by consumers of your brand than by the brand itself. And so that need for transparency, connectedness, real-time action, all of that is super important in the marketing world today. That's also translating to our business. So customers' expectations around know me, personalize to me, anticipate my needs, communicate with me honestly and be transparent is much more than it's been in the past. And then the last piece around multi-generationalism that we have in our business. Our customer base, I would say in North America alone, about 80% of our customer base that are users and implementers of factory automation technology in production environments are going to retire in the next 8 years. That's a huge knowledge transfer, knowledge gap that's going to exist. And we as marketers have to think about how do we still drive loyalty and sales revenue and growth and adoption with that customer base, while this new, I'm a Gen Xer, new Gen X and millennial population is starting to walk into those jobs and make decision-making capabilities. And so their expectations for us as a brand are a little unique and distinct from the prior generations. So that multi-generational component affects our technology as well as our marketing efforts. So let's think about what it takes to drive transformation, especially in a time of good health. It takes a combination of the head and the heart. I think about the natural state of an individual is to resist change, to stay in the place that you've been in, especially if that place feels safe. But what percentage of the decisions that you make on a given basis are made by just your head, just your brain? Think about the decisions, where you're going to go to college, whether or not you're going to change companies, if you're going to get married, who you're going to get married to, whether or not you have kids, what car you're going to buy. The majority of the decision-making process in that activity is not coming from your brain. There is not enough data to tell you that this is the right one to marry or this is the right college to go to. So there is this combination and intersection of head and heart that makes us truly human, and that's what guides our decision-making. So think about that as you're thinking about your business. What drives value for your business today? What could disrupt it? A percentage of our time as leaders should be around disruption. And how could you build new value for your customer base future state differently than you do today? So how do you do that? It's not just about the business need and the next offering that you're going to provide to the market. It's also about the environment, the culture, what you're going to create that's new and distinct and different. So whether that's communicating outside to the market or whether that's communicating internally to the people that you need to get on board, that's really important to connect both head and heart. I think about at Rockwell, we've been driving our digital business transformation initiative for the last 5 years. Even before then, we started in the marketing side, which is many companies start their digital transformation through marketing. And really, it was about what are the possibilities? What can we do for our business going forward if we drive this capability? And our digital transformation has been a long road to get the company to move over the last 5 years. But the last couple of years, we've really been accelerating that initiative, and it's been really exciting. So that's what I think about transformation for the company. It's about identifying the business needs, but also identifying what that future state feels like, looks like, sounds like, experiences for your employees, for yourself, for your customers. When I think about leadership and what it takes, I think about, in fact, I have used this metaphor for probably about 10 years, and it's around an hourglass. And ironically, Solstice sent me an hourglass about 2 years ago in the mail. And unrelated, it was one of those kind of kismet moments. But I've used that, I have it on my desk, I use it with my team all the time. And I talk about what it takes to drive transformational leadership. When you start as an individual contributor, you start at the bottom of that hourglass with lots of other grains of sand. And those grains of sand, you're trying to differentiate yourself. You're thinking about the network you need to build, the skills you need to build. How do you shimmer and shine and provide that view that you're a jewel for the company and differentiate yourself? That's your role when you're an individual contributor. And you're looking at the organization from the bottom and you're looking up and you're seeing management in the middle and you're seeing leadership on top. When you transition to management, you have to transition and pivot your thinking and your prioritization. I think the best managers are the ones that think about their teams first, in alignment with the company agenda, and themselves second, third. So how many of us have worked for managers where you feel like their personal agenda suddenly became your agenda? Doesn't feel good, does it? When it's the company's agenda, you can get on board. When it feels slighted or personal, you don't really feel as engaged. It doesn't tap into your heart. So when I think about the best managers I've worked with and worked for, they focus on the health, the success. They eliminate the obstacles of their teams. They guide, they challenge, they support their organization, and they make sure that the work that their team is focused on aligns to the company priorities. Management, I talk to my team a lot about that middle of the hourglass. It is a pinch point. It's a tough spot to be in. You have to understand how everything happens. That's the heartbeat of where culture exists. Most people in an organization work at the management level or below, so that's really where the work happens. And you see how all the parts fit together. And you're expected to understand how your operation runs. When you move to that leadership level, you're at the top. And when you're looking up as a manager, you have to ensure that you understand that broader company perspective and goal. You have to understand where the disruptions, where the trends, where the issues are, and drive your teams forward. When you move to that leadership level, there tend to be less grains of sand that stay up there. That's the reality. Kind of goes to the top, right? And ultimately, your orientation has to pivot yet once again. And it's around the company objectives and needs. It's ensuring that you have the right team in place that focuses on the teams themselves and on the individuals and talent within your organization, and that can drive and support that change. As a leader, you have to create a safe environment for those managers to operate and make decisions and encourage and support. You can't have that toxic environment happening with all of your teams underneath. And ultimately, you have to be a champion for change. All those grains of sand are looking up at you and wondering, what are you doing? What decisions are you making? How do they feel engaged with the work that you're doing and the example that you're setting? Leaders cannot be truly successful if they put themselves first. Everybody sees it. It's not opaque to the organization. And so it's our job as leaders to really walk the walk, talk the talk, set the tone. I've had an opportunity to probably meet a dozen or so CEOs from other companies throughout my career and have some really good one-on-one discussions. And one that resonates the most with me was an individual who summed up his job in 3 bullets. As a CEO, there's 3 things he worries about: setting strategy, picking the right team, and setting the tone of culture. He said, everything else I pay someone else to do. And so that is my job as a CEO. So when you think about that leadership component and how important it is, that's critical, especially at a time of transformation. So let's talk about transformation in your own career. I'll give you a story. I grew up in Chicago, school up in Milwaukee, where I live today. I grew up in a family. My parents are both from Iran. They moved here in the late 60s. And I came from a really, really medically oriented family. My father and my uncles were doctors. My mom's side of the family, lots of nurses in the family, a couple engineers. But ultimately, I was the last of 3 kids, and I was the last child going to college, where my dad thought, maybe this time I'll get a doctor out of the family. He really wanted it. And he had said to me, I don't know much about business. I'm a doctor, I have my own practice, I'm affiliated. He was chief of surgery at a hospital here in Chicago. That's what I can help you with as a parent. So I started pre-med because I was the dutiful daughter, and I thought that was really what I wanted to do, and it tapped into my brain. It definitely challenged me intellectually. But as I got through about my 2nd year of college, I came home and talked to my dad and said, Dad, I'm changing my major. And he said, what are you changing your major to? And I said, I want to be a journalist. And he literally looked at me, man of few words, and said, could you pick a lower paying profession? Right? How many of us grew up in communications? It's a tough gig, right? So I said, don't worry, Dad, I'm not going to live in the basement for my whole life. I promise I'll be able to take care of myself. I'll be self-sufficient. So what did I do? I followed my heart, what I was passionate about, which was storytelling, writing, translating abstract concepts into words. But I also went back to school and I worked on 5 internships in college, right? I applied my head to it, saying, oh, I better increase my odds that I'm not going to live in my parents' basement, because then he's just going to say I told you so for the rest of my life. And ultimately, I luckily have been successful in my career so far. So to me, that was a balance. When I thought about my career, I thought the pragmatic thing to do was to really follow that profession. My dad could guide me, he could coach me, he had lots of connections in the medical profession. It would be a great living, and I totally admire that way of life. But for me, it wasn't my calling, so I went a different direction, but I saw it all the way through. So I tell my team all the time, I have a really interesting organization. It's about 500 people globally, and it's a combination of people that tend to be perceived as those who lean into their head, meaning they're engineers, they're technical, they're IT professionals, different kinds of walks of life that live in my organization that are really about the business itself and the technology. And then I have a creative side that's really focused on things like content, visual, message, activation. And so it's this really interesting blend of head and heart as an organization, even though every individual brings both of those to bear. And I tell the team all the time, there is not one path for you. If you love the craft of what you do and you want to hone and focus on that craft and you want to create, whether that's creating technology solutions or creating communication solutions, focus on that. If you really want to focus your time and effort on developing and supporting others, move into management. If you really want to help drive the company agenda and drive change throughout the organization, move into leadership. Don't make sacrifices or make trades with yourself thinking what you ought to do. Think about what you're really skilled at, what you're really passionate about, and what you're willing to sacrifice and work towards. That's what it takes. So, I'll leave you with a closing thought from the leader that Paul mentioned before, Nelson Mandela. He led a transformation for a country that ultimately transformed the world around it. That was not a pragmatic decision. That was a combination of head and heart, a combination of passion and pragmatism. And he did it tenaciously for decades. And I think this quote sums it up for me. A good heart and a good head are always a formidable combination. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.